Hi, I'm Peter Ball. I'm a storyteller and author, and today's video I'd like to talk about my Qui Magi series that I wrote during 2020, during the pandemic pretty much. The series was written for young adults. That's completely different to my P and Bean series, and I'd never written anything like this before, and the idea just popped into my head. It came out of nowhere. I was just waking up one morning and I was in that half awake state, and a story began to unfold in my head. And sometimes that happens to me. I don't know if it happens to other storytellers, but I quite liked the story. I was quite entertained, and I decided to make a note of it when I got up. I think I wrote 2 or 3 sentences. There wasn't much to write. The idea wouldn't go away, and I kept thinking about it, and so I wrote some more ideas. I started jotting down character names, looking up medieval characters. Well, I started wondering about where it was going to be set, doing a bit of research. And then eventually I came up with a plan to write a story set in the Middle Ages. I came up with the year 1228 and the region of Umbria, Italy, simply because Umbria is a really beautiful area and really full of medieval villages to this day, and they're still in almost original form, apart from having electricity and plumbing added. Towns like Gubbio, Amelia, Assisi, gorgeous stone cottages and cobblestone streets. It just seemed a natural place for me to set a medieval story. And I decided to make it a historical fiction, so I wanted it to be accurate. And so I spent a fair bit of time just researching the region and that period of time, what was happening in the world, what were the beliefs, what do people eat, how do people get around. I had to research a lot about horses, and because I don't know anything about them. And eventually the pandemic hit, and I was a teacher at the time, and being over 60 and being in the so-called high risk group, I requested time off, took some sick leave, and thought what better time than to start writing my book. Now, I'd never written a book like this before, and P and Bean was always very wacky, silly, nonsensy kind of stories. And this was going to be completely different, a historical fiction / fantasy set in the Middle Ages, real people, not veggies. You know, they had to have real emotions, and so I had to completely rethink how I was going to write, and I was a bit daunted as to where to start. I had a few friends I talked through ideas with, and eventually I started writing page 1, book 1, where Milo, the main character, his 15-year-old, who in those days 15 was considered an adult, and he has been discovered reading from the forbidden section of the library in the monastery, and he's been branded a heretic, and he knows what they do to heretics, and so he escapes. He goes on the run, where he eventually meets his uncle Sabatino, whom he barely knows. And Sabatino was an alchemist and quite wealthy, retired trader in his 60s, living in Gubbio. And he takes Milo in, and you'll have to read the book to find out what happens next. And somewhere in book 1, by the way, Milo is an orphan, and that's why he's in the monastery. His mother went missing, and the local priest sent him to the monastery to be looked after, which may well have happened in those days, I'm not sure. The monastery of San Biagio, by the way, is real. It still exists, and you can stay there. It's now a health resort. But in those days, it really was a Templar monastery. And in fact, I wasn't going to put the Templars in the story at all. It was just going to be a random monastery. But when I found that this was a Templar monastery, I thought, no, they're too big, they're too colourful not to put in the story. Anyway, the story develops into book 2, where he escapes Italy altogether and heads on Sabatino's advice to the Levant, which is the medieval word for the Middle East, and where the Crusades were happening. And he arrives at the city of Acca, or Acco, as the locals called it at the time. It was a fortress, fortified city, and a port, and it was the main port for the Crusaders to arrive and to also bring in goods. Now, at that time, King Frederick II, I had to do some research about the Crusades, and I discovered that Frederick II was kind of forced by the Pope to go on crusade. But when he got there, his heart wasn't in the fight, and he met with the leader of the Islamic forces, and they came to an agreement, and there was a truce. And the agreement stated that the pilgrims could go to Jerusalem, they could go to Bethlehem, they could go to Nazareth, and there'd be no fighting. And that lasted about 10 years. So that changed the way I had planned the story to be, to perhaps include some battles, but that couldn't be. But it opened up another set of opportunities for me, as it often did. When I was researching history or geography, quite often fortuitous events would crop up and make the story even better. So part of the story is from my imagination, and part of it is supplied with ideas from real history and real geography. So, for example, San Biagio Monastery, altered the story to include the Templars. So this enables Milo to travel across the desert to Jerusalem with a young street kid named Nagi as his guide. Now, I don't know where Nagi came from. He came out of my head somewhere. He is a delightful, mischievous character, and everyone who's read the story really liked him. So when he gets to Jerusalem, he has to meet with Ishraq, who is an old trading buddy of his uncle Sabatino, and also an alchemist, and charged with taking his education further. During this time, Milo is growing, maturing, he's growing in confidence, he's growing in his skills as a magus. He kind of unwittingly agreed to become a magus when his uncle suggested it. And now he's in full training mode. And as a result of some of the training, his sensitivity, his intuition has improved. And he gets the strongest sense that his mother is still alive, and he has to go and find her. So he travels back to Italy, book 3, to find his mother, and he has a sense that there's some danger as well, and there is, because she's being hunted down. She's escaped, and she's been hunted down by the Lupo Nero. Now, the Lupo Nero I made up. It's an Italian word for black wolf. The Black Wolves were after her because they were a vigilante group that hunted down heretics for the church. A little overzealous and violent men. So there's a race against who's going to find her first, the Lupo Nero or Milo. There's a bit of a love interest in there as well. This girl that he meets in book 1 comes back in book 3. Their little first love blossoms. And I'm not going to say anything more about what happens in book 3, but when it finishes, Milo is a man. The beginning of book 1, he's a scared teenager. The end of book 3, he's a confident young man. He is Qui Magi, the Magus, which is what the title of the whole series is. He is now officially the Magus of that area, and he has different responsibilities. And that kind of winds up the trilogy of the 3 books. Now, originally I was only going to write a trilogy, but when I finished, I thought I've got all these wonderful characters in this gorgeous setting. I could easily take this on to another series. So I've started writing book 4 with the working title Et Occultatum, The Hidden, which refers to some rather remarkable characters that he meets in book 3. And that's probably going to be a different series, a different set of circumstances. Everything was kind of resolved in the first 3 books. Everything that was a problem has been sorted. So book 4 starts 4 years down the track. Things have changed and developed. Milo is married, he's got twins. His story's completely starting from a different basis. And that's where it's up to. I will write another, I will do another video when book 4 is complete, and I'll give a little bit of a insight into that story. It's quite different, but all the same characters. If you have any questions about the series, put them in the comments below. I'm not sure if I mentioned that it was young adult fiction. It's not a kid's book. And if you would like me to be a speaker at your school, I do that sort of thing. You can contact me at my website, peterball.com.au, or just leave an inquiry in the comments and I'll follow it up. And I'm going to leave it there. So, thanks for listening. And if you want to get the books, if you'd like to read them, they're available in Amazon Kindle at the moment. You can download an ebook, or if you're in the US, you can print the book. Unfortunately, you can't get a print book in Australia at the moment. I had to get my brother in the US to send me these. Read it, see what you think. Leave a review. Cheers, bye.